The spirit of the law. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. He has enabled us to be ministers of his new covenant. This is a covenant not of written laws, but of the Spirit. The letter ends in death, but the Spirit gives life. Jeanette had been coming to the wooden dock at Summit Lake since her early 20s. It was the perfect setting to write. She loved the way the dock would give way as she stepped on it, followed by the hollow clink as it lightly knocked against the metal pole it was tethered to. Then she would tiptoe to the end, rest her bare feet at the edge, and sit still as a rock just to feel that moment of weightlessness as she buoyed up and down, one with the lake. She always marinated in that space for at least 15 minutes before pulling out her pen. From there, the words swam from her hand like a fish in water. After years of honing into this intuitive part of her process, Jeanette knew without a doubt that there was something magical or otherworldly about writing. The art of communicating a message wasn't just about words on a page, having a large vocabulary, or ensuring proper subject-verb agreement. It was something about a good story that went beyond the anatomy of the language. Everything written had a soul or a voice that carried the energy along. The letters alone could never bring you to the climax of a tale. Only the spirit of the writer could do that. Jeanette's favorite display of this was her students. She taught a virtual English class for Hungarians who were preparing to come over to the States soon. At the conclusion of every chapter, she would have each pupil tell a story using information learned in the most recent unit. Instead of grading these stories, Jeanette would have the other students share what they felt or received from the narrative. Every time, she smiled with glee as she got a front row view of how each person leaves a unique imprint on storytelling and comprehension. In fact, the best stories she's heard from these exercises were often most riddled with grammatical errors and misspellings. One in particular was Swiss cheese with plot holes, but the message was still heard loud and clear. This always left her with the same 3 conclusions. 1, you can have a great story with bad language and lots of soul. 2, but you can never have a great story with great language and no soul. 3, ideally you have both, but if you must go without one, don't let it be the soul that you leave out. Jeanette was confident in her theory and believed she had seen the height of examples that proved it correct. Until one day, a student named Zhuzha gave the prime example of just how solid her theory was. Zhuzha began reading her story to the group, and something was off. Everything she was saying was proper standard English, and the plot made sense, but the voice didn't sound like the Zhuzha the class had come to know. Everyone let her finish, but once it was time to give their input, they all came up blank. It was as if her story was reminiscent of every story we heard before, but with no seasoning. It was Wonder Bread with no butter, boiled carrots, vanilla wafer. Before it got too awkward, Zhuzha finally gave in and kicked back in a belly laugh. I'm joking, guys. I input our vocabulary and lessons into an AI processor, and that's the story I wrote. A wave of understanding passed through the group, and Jeanette laughed as she appreciated the experiment in ways Zhuzha wouldn't know. And they said AI was coming for our jobs, Jeanette thought. Tuh, not with that dry chicken.